I never looked back. That 1 second of hesitation may have been the reason we didn't get away. Beware. It was well past midnight when we decided to pull off at the last gas station before the rest stopped. The lights of the sign buzzed overhead as I opened the car door and my son got out on the other side. B had been driving for hours through the endless black ribbon of highway, occasionally broken only by the white lines on the asphalt, and even those seemed to have faded away, leaving us truly alone on this stretch of lonely road. The gas station was almost eerily silent. No cars except our own were parked at the pumps. A single fluorescent light flickered above the counter inside, casting long, distorted shadows around the room. As I started to fill the car up, my gaze fell on something that sent a chill down my spine. Parked by the pump was another car, a replica of ours. Same color, same license plate. Even the same luggage resting on the back seat. But how could there be another car just like ours here? I turned to my son, but his eyes were wide with a similar mixture of surprise and fear. We exchanged a look that spoke volume. Was this some bizarre form of deja vu? Had we accidentally driven into a parallel universe, or something more sinister at play? As I stood there, contemplating the impossible, the sight of a lone truck rumbling over the horizon brought me back to reality. In the grand scheme of things, it could just be a coincidence, I told myself, trying to quell the unease that was growing within me. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, deeply unsettling. My gut was telling me to get out of there, but curiosity and a dash of skepticism kept me routed to the spot. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. Glancing back at the duplicate car, I noticed a faint glow coming from within. It was the interior light, and I could have sworn it wasn't on when we first arrived. Was someone in there? The thought sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I quickly finished pumping the gas, practically shoving the nozzle back into the tank. My hands were shaking slightly, betraying the growing panic within. As I turned to leave, I noticed something else, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. On the ground, beside the duplicate car, were 2 distinct sets of tire tracks that appeared to lead nowhere. There were no other vehicles in sight, and the tracks showed no signs of having come from anything other than the car itself. How could that be possible? Was this some sort of sick joke played by the gas station attendant? The thought crossed my mind, but I knew it was a long shot. This place felt deserted, abandoned even. I wondered where the attendant was, why there was no response to my earlier wave. I turned back to the car, but the interior light had gone out, leaving me with more questions than answers. What was going on? Who was behind all this? Caught with a deep breath, I tried to calm myself down. There was no rational explanation for what I was seeing. I had to snap out of it and focus on getting my son and I back on the road. But as I reached for the door handle, a sudden gust of wind sent a shiver down my spine. It was a cold winter night, so the unexpected breeze was particularly unnerving. But that wasn't what made me freeze in my tracks. It was what that gust carried with it, a faint, sweet scent like decaying flowers or overripe fruit. It was cloying and sickly, and it seemed to be coming from the duplicate car. My son, bless his innocent heart, asked, "What's that smell, Dad?" "Peas." His voice was small, barely a whisper in the vast emptiness of the gas station. I hesitated, not wanting to alarm him, but I knew I couldn't hide the truth forever. "I don't know," I replied, forcing my voice to stay level. "But we need to get out of here." The urgency in my voice betrayed my attempt at calmness. I helped my son back into his seat, buckling him up as quickly as I could. Then I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. As I turned to go, I couldn't resist one last glance back at the other car. The interior light was still off, but the sickly sweet smell was stronger now, almost overpowering. I pulled out of the gas station without another word, eager to put as much distance between us and that place as possible. The hum of the engine and the soft glow of the dashboard lights were a comforting distraction from the unsettling scene we had just left behind. I tried to focus on the road ahead, willing myself to dismiss the events at the gas station as a bizarre fluke. But as the minutes passed, a sense of foreboding settled over me. It was as if the uneasiness we had felt at the gas station was now a physical presence in the car with us. Brr. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the tires on the road and my son Squire breathing in the passenger seat. Every rustle of leaves outside the window, every screech of an owl took on a sinister quality, and I found myself jumping at the most unexpected of noises. Then it happened. I saw it again. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the exact same car, the one from the gas station, crawling along the road ahead of us. At first I thought I was mistaken. Surely it couldn't be following us, but then it became impossible to deny the truth. The same make, model, and color, even the same license plate. Bite? It was our doppelganger, mirroring our every move. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I slammed on the brakes, sending our car skidding to a halt on the shoulder. My son, sensing the urgency in my movements, had the good sense to remain quiet, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Ty." I turned to him, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Stay in the car," I whispered, opening the door and stepping out. I needed to get a closer look to confirm what I knew, what I hoped was impossible. Plus, as I walked towards the back of the car, each step echoing in the eerie silence, I couldn't help but think how insane this all sounded. A duplicate car, following us, mimicking our every move. Was I losing my mind? Biff. Had the stress of the journey finally gotten to me? But as I rounded the corner of the car and saw the familiar luggage in the back seat, I knew this was no figment of my imagination. Frozen in place, I watched as the duplicate car came to a stop a few feet away. It was as if it had materialized out of thin air. I wanted to run, to scream, but fear had paralyzed me. And then the door opened, and I saw him. P. stepped out of the car, his face obscured by the darkness of the night. All I could see were his dark, soulless eyes, staring back at me. I'm telling this story because if I don't, I fear it will consume me entirely. It was 3 in the morning when we decided to stop for gas. I can still remember the silence of the car, the soft hum of the engine slowly fading away like a lullaby. My sister and I had been on the road for hours, trying to make it back home before sunrise. Our little town was a speck of existence in the vast emptiness of Nevada, which meant that our drives were filled with nothing but the desolate beauty of endless highways. Occasional ghost town that looked more like a graveyard than a neighborhood. But on this night, my sister was determined to keep driving even after our gas light turned on. She said she could feel something dark watching us from the back seat, but she refused to let that deter her. We pulled up to the lone gas station, its neon sign buzzing like a trapped fly in the darkness. I noticed my sister's hand tightened on the steering wheel. I asked if she was okay, but all she did was nod, her eyes fixed on the pump. It felt like the silence between us was growing heavier with every second. We got back on the highway. And as the minutes passed, the unsettling feeling didn't subside. In fact, it grew. Each mile marker that whizzed by felt like a countdown to something unknown. We passed the usual roadside attractions, but tonight they seemed distorted, almost menacing. A billboard advertising a water park looked like a malevolent grin, and the friendly faces of the local diners seemed to mock our solitude. Then it happened. Just after midnight, as we were passing through a small town, we decided to snap a quick picture to remember our journey. But when we checked the camera, the photos showed something that made my blood run cold. Standing just behind us, shrouded in darkness, was a tall, gaunt man. Pesfi's was obscured by the shadows, but his eyes seemed to pierce the camera lens, locking onto ours. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light or a blurry image, but my sister's face was pale as death. We started to talk, not wanting to acknowledge what we had seen. But as we drove, more photos, more images of that same man, appearing silently behind us. It was as if he were a specter haunting our journey. The man in the pictures wasn't tall or short, thin or fat. He was just there, always looming right behind us. At first, he was holding nothing, but then he began carrying a black briefcase. It wasn't big, but it seemed to weigh him down. He always stood at the same distance from the car, never coming closer, never waving or making any gesture. He was an enigma, a silent specter in the backdrop of our lives. Each time we stopped to take a picture, he appeared in the next shot. He was persistent, patient, a shadow that followed us everywhere. Presence became a constant dread, casting a chill over our laughter and stealing the warmth from our shared meals, even during moments of joy. The thought of the stranger lurking behind us, unseen, unheard, yet ever present, soured our happiness. My sister and I exchanged worried glances. Who was this man? What did he want? Was he watching us, studying us, waiting for something? Or was it all just a terrible accident? We tried reasoning with ourselves, but fear had taken root, twisting itself around our hearts, squeezing the joy out of life and leaving only terror in its wake. In the beginning, It was just a strange occurrence, an eerie blip on our radar. But as the days turned into weeks, the mystery deepened. Every new photograph added another layer of complexity to the puzzle, bringing us no closer to a solution. It was as if the man in the photos was mocking our intelligence, toying with our fears and reveling in our confusion. The fear that had been dormant within me reawakened with each click of the shutter. It coiled in my stomach, slithered up my spine, and settled in my throat, turning my voice into a hoarse whisper. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, burdened by the unseen, haunted by the whispers of dread. I had to confront the specter in the photographs, unravel the enigma of the man who seemed to have become an unwelcome fixture in our lives. Where do you start when your greatest fear has no name, no face, no voice? How do you fight an enemy that lurks in the shadows, striking only at the edges of your perception? For me, the journey began with a decision. I decided to comb through the hundreds of photos we'd taken since the nightmare started, searching for patterns, for clues, for anything that could shed some light on the darkness that had fallen upon us. It was a painstaking process, each click of the mouse echoing the relentless tick-tock of the clock, reminding me of the urgency of my quest. Hours turned into days, yet I persisted. I needed answers, even if they threatened to shatter the fragile reality I clung to. And then I saw it. It was a subtle detail, one that had eluded me in the chaos of my initial investigation, a tiny discrepancy that held the key to the mystery. In one of the earlier pictures, taken at a roadside motel, I noticed a peculiar item in the man's hand. It was a ring, a simple silver band with what looked like a ruby in the center. It wasn't a significant piece of jewelry, but to me, it was a beacon in the darkness, a lifeline thrown across the abyss of fear. Hope surged through me, chasing away the shadows of doubt that had clouded my mind. Could this be the answer I sought? Could this ring lead me to the identity, to the motive of the specter in our photographs? With renewed vigor, I delved deeper into the world of online investigation. I scoured the internet searching for any information that could link the ring to its owner, hoping against hope that somewhere in the vast expanse of the digital world there would be a record, a reference, anything to give me a foothold on this elusive phantom. Days turned into weeks, and still my search yielded no results. Bring, with its enigmatic allure, remained a mystery. But I wasn't about to give up. I decided to retrace our steps, revisiting the places where we had seen the man in the photo, hoping that somehow, somewhere, there would be a tangible link to his presence, something solid amidst the shifting sands of fear. As I walked the streets where our car had stopped, I looked for anything out of the ordinary, for any clue that could connect the dots of this bizarre enigma. Then I noticed it, a small antique store I hadn't noticed before, tucked away on a side street. There was something about the store that beckoned me. As if sensing the urgency of my quest, I stepped inside. The air inside the store was thick with the scent of aged wood and forgotten memories. As I moved through the labyrinth of antiques, each item whispering tales of times gone by. I felt a strange sense of familiarity. Please. Then I saw it, a display case filled with an array of rings. Hope surged through me, and I rushed towards it. Bare, nestled among the sparkling gems, was the ring from the photographs. It seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, calling out to me as if eager to reveal its secret. I reached out, my fingers trembling slightly as I lifted the ring from its velvet cushion. As my fingers closed around the cool metal, a jolt, like an electric shock, coursed through my body. It was a sensation that defied explanation, a sudden surge of energy that left me shaken to my core. In that moment, I knew I wasn't just holding a ring. I was touching a portal to the unknown, a tangible link to the shadowy figure that had invaded our lives. But what did it mean? Why had the ring reacted so violently to my touch? And what was the connection between this seemingly ordinary object and the enigma that haunted us? The questions swirled in my mind, intensifying the mystery, deepening the enigma. I knew I was on the brink of something profound, something that could either unravel the mystery or plunge me deeper into its suffocating depths. The crossroads was here, and I had to decide: continue down the path of uncertainty or turn back before it was too late. As we drove deeper and deeper into the woods, the trees began to close in around us, their branches reaching out like grasping claws. Pass. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by towering trees and thick underbrush, with not a soul in sight. And that's when the voice said, "You're almost there." It all started when my sister and I decided to take a road trip down south. We were visiting our grandparents, who lived in a small town in Georgia. And since neither of us had been there before, we decided to use a GPS to help us navigate the unfamiliar roads. We downloaded the maps onto our phones and set off on our adventure. The drive was beautiful, filled with winding roads that took us through charming little towns and past fields of sunflowers that stretched as far as the eye could see. But as we approached our destination, the scenery took a darker turn. The GPS kept rerouting us onto this narrow dirt road that barely looked like it was meant for cars, let alone two cars driving side by side. But the voice insisted we keep going, saying we were almost there. Each turn felt more unsettling than the last, like we were being deliberately led deeper and deeper into the woods. The air grew heavy with a scent of pine, and the sound of birdsong was replaced by an eerie silence. As the trees grew thicker, the light from the sky grew dimmer, casting long, eerie shadows on the ground. The GPS kept telling us to keep going straight ahead, but I couldn't help but feel like we were being lured into a trap. The road eventually came to a fork, and the GPS told us to go straight. As we made the turn, the trees seemed to close in around us, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. The road was barely wide enough for our car, and the sides were lined with thick underbrush that brushed against the windows, obscuring our view. It felt like we were driving through a tunnel made of thorny vines, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. They were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by towering trees and thick underbrush, with not a soul in sight. The GPS said, "You have reached your destination," but there was nothing here but trees. We were lost, deep in the heart of an unfamiliar forest, with no way out. My sister and I exchanged a worried glance. Neither of us had ever been in this part of the woods before, and we didn't know how to get back to the main road. The silence was deafening, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for us to make a move. I tried to calm myself, telling myself that we would find a way out. But as the minutes dragged on, my anxiety grew. The forest seemed to be closing in around us, the trees pressing closer together, their branches forming a dense canopy overhead that blocked out the sunlight. The air grew colder, sending a shiver down my spine. We decided to try retracing our steps, hoping that we would eventually find a familiar landmark. But after walking for what felt like hours, we realized that everything looked the same. The trees were all tall and dark, their trunks bare and imposing. The underbrush was thick and thorny, making it difficult to navigate, and the further we walked, the more hopeless we felt. Just when we thought we couldn't go on any longer, we heard the sound of a car in the distance. Hope surged through us, and we raced toward the road, waving our arms frantically. But as the car approached, we saw that it wasn't coming to a stop. It just kept driving past us, its headlights sweeping over us like a circle. We stood there on the side of the road, our thumbs out, watching it disappear into the darkness. We were completely alone again, with no one to help us, no one to save us. The forest was alive with strange noises now. The snapping of twigs, the rustling of leaves, the hooting of owls. Every sound seemed to send shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. At first we thought they were just branches, but as we watched, we saw them move. They were tall and thin, like human figures, but they were made of something that looked like twisted metal. They seemed to be everywhere, lurking in the trees, watching us. My mind raced, trying to come up with an explanation. Were there some kind of art installation? Had we stumbled upon a secret, forbidden place? But the scarier thought was that they were something else, something sinister, something evil. I wanted to run, to get as far away from those figures as possible, but my legs felt heavy, and my feet routed to the spot. I couldn't move. Those figures seemed to be beckoning me, calling to me in some unknown language. And the scarier thought was that they were something sinister, something evil. With each step we took, the forest grew darker, the trees more menacing. The figures seemed to be getting closer, their eyes boring into us. Then we heard it, a low growl that seemed to come from the trees themselves. It was a sound that sent shivers down my spine, a sound that spoke of ancient evil and primal fear. My sister and I huddled closer together, our bodies shaking. We didn't want to run, but we knew we had to. We turned and fled, crashing through the underbrush, our eyes fixed on the dark shapes looming in the trees. Behind us, we could hear the growling getting louder, more insistent. It was as if whatever was chasing us was gaining on us, closing in, but we couldn't escape. The forest was a labyrinth, the trees all looking the same, the paths all leading to the same dark places. We were trapped. And as the darkness closed in around us, I knew that we weren't just lost in a forest. We were lost in something far more sinister, something that had been waiting for us, something that had claimed us as its own. And then we heard the voice again. It was the voice from the GPS, but it sounded different. Now, distorted, menacing. It said, "You can't escape. You're mine now." The trees seemed to press closer, their branches reaching out like grasping claws. And in the distance, we could hear the growling, the triumphant roar of the creature that had found its prey. We were lost, afraid and utterly alone. Bro, there was no one to help us, no one to save us. We were trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. As we ran blindly through the forest, crashing through the underbrush, our lungs burning, our hearts pounding, we knew that we were being hunted, that we were the prey, and the predator was closing in. The trees seemed to be closing in around us, the branches reaching out like spiderwebs, trying to catch us, trying to hold us. But we couldn't stop. We had to keep moving, had to keep running. Then we saw it. In the distance, through the trees, we saw a faint glimmer of light. Hope surged through us, and we raced toward it, stumbling over roots, falling into ditches, but never stopping. The light grew brighter as we approached, revealing a dirt road. And at the end of the road, we could see the faint outline of a house. With a final burst of energy, we stumbled onto the road and began walking toward the house. As we got closer, we could hear the sound of voices, the murmur of conversation, the laughter of children. It was the sound of life, of safety, of hope. But as we reached the house, the sounds seemed to fade away, leaving us in an eerie silence. The house was old and dilapidated, with peeling paint and boarded-up windows. The yard was overgrown with weeds and the porch was collapsing. It looked abandoned, deserted, like no one had lived there for years. We didn't care. We were desperate for help, for anyone to understand, for someone to save us. So we knocked on the door. And as we waited for an answer, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched.